Return, O Virgin Daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's House of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America. Hello, this is Stefania Pappas with B'nai Yosef North America, and with me is Al McCarn, our Executive Director, and we're going to part 2 in our interview with Gayle Timberlake from Texas. Isn't that right, Al?
Yes, Gayle is from Austin, right there in the heart of Texas, and we are going to pick up with why she has developed the Simcha Foundation to help Christians understand the feasts of the Lord and the Shabbat. She will start out talking about memory and remembering things. And she is right that our God wants us to remember. We see continued cycles of reminders and repetition throughout the scriptures. You know, even when we get to Acts chapter 7 and the defense that Stephen gave in front of the Sanhedrin, how does he do his defense? Well, he starts by reciting the history of Israel. And that's because remembering what God has done and who his people are and what he expects of his people is a huge part of walking out this life in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, that's how the interview begins. And then we get into the details of what the Simcha Foundation offers. So let's go on out to Austin, Texas, and continue our conversation with Dr. Gayle Timberlake.
The faith of Jesus is one that remembers, always remembers what happened at this time. And so the art of remembering is huge. And so how could then now in this day and age, I wanted to realize how could that happen now? And what I did realize is that the traditions of Jesus, they're timeless. And so how could we reinstitute the timeless traditions of Jesus in my personal household and to help other parents who wanted to follow a path that would match more the earliest believers and how they lived life? And I realized that for myself, it was a personal study and going through a master's, and that where I started to learn more. And then I went and got my PhD in Second Temple Judaism, really surrounded around the customs and traditions of the earliest Christians. And then I had an unlikely opportunity to be mentored by a 5th generation Orthodox Jewish rabbi who came from the traditions of straight from Israel, and learn more and more and more and more as I went along. So living in Israel, having a mentor as an Orthodox rabbi gave me a look at it that really didn't come from what we've learned over the years through Christianity and church history, but really more like what we've seen through Jewish history over the years, expressed through my experience as a believer in Jesus and the Holy Spirit and the Trinity and the Father. So that's really where I come from, is trying to explain and make really simple what is not so simple to try to figure out for Christians. It's not an easy road to try to figure it out. And so what we've done is begun to create products and teachings that make it easy to figure out, so that you can bring those traditions into your home and begin to celebrate and begin to have the rest and the joy that are part of our inheritance.
It's a fascinating journey. And I just wonder, Gayle, I call it the Torah awakening among Christians. And it's been going on now. We're in the 2nd generation, I suppose. What do you think the Lord is doing in the church worldwide at this time, and also in the Jewish body worldwide? What is he doing now to increase this awareness and this openness for crosstalk?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. I had a meeting just this week with the former president and CEO of the Jewish Community Center here in Austin, and we have a lot of these conversations. What's happening in the Jewish world worldwide, and what's happening within those believers in Jesus worldwide? What I know is that the Lord is starting a movement where he is expressing an interest in believers in Jesus to know more about how to step into their full identity. What I believe is that through each celebratory season on the biblical calendar or the calendar that Jesus followed, say it however you choose, there is identity that's released in each festive season, and there's identity that's released in each weekly time of rest, and that there's an identity that's released so that people find out more about who they are. Why? Because the character of God is revealed in each one. And you can't help but find out more about who you are, your own identity, if the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords is revealing more of his character. So what happens is he reveals his character and we learn who we are. We gain our identity through each seasonal event that happens on the calendar. And I believe it's always intended to be that way. We've just had a long pause as Christians, and now it's time to start in again. You know, I started a project about 20 years ago. It was called Festival in a Box, and it was a version of the box that we're folding into Simca Foundation now. And the idea was you would receive a box at your doorstep, you open it up, parents, whoever received it, grandparents, singles, whoever it was, take the things out of the box, look inside, and be able to celebrate the season at hand, to be able to participate in the biblical calendar. At that time, I had a lot of interest, and so I finally took the box to a publisher, and I said, I'm kind of interested in doing more than this, than a reach that I'm interested in pursuing. And so I thought I would give it to you, have you take a look at it. They crunched a bunch of numbers. I had a couple of publishers look at it. And one of them came back and they said, ma'am, you said this is a product. I said, it is a product. It's a box with everything that you need to celebrate the spring festival season on the calendar of Jesus. And they said, no, this is a movement. And I said, yes, it is a movement. It's not mine. I'm just jumping into and participating in the movement from heaven that's always been meant for us, that we've been missing. It's not an obligatory thing. It's not something you have to. It's not something that's required. It's like a get to. And so I'm just participating in the movement of Jesus. I'm participating in what the earliest Christians did and reteaching, because I had the opportunity to live in and study and do research in this field, and then turn it around and make it easy and fun. I've always been one for making everything really fun. And that's an easy thing to do with the calendar of the first century, to make it really fun.
Well, that's true. Because most of it has to do with good food.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the illustrations that I often use is that if you picture one of the most beautiful banquet tables you've ever been to, the kind that holds hors d'oeuvres, that's at the edge of the room, and it might have this beautiful ice sculpture in the middle that's been carved, and it might have chocolate flowing over here, and just the caviar and all the best. And how silly it would be for anyone to go up and grab a Ritz cracker and spread some Philadelphia cream cheese on it and leave. That would be ridiculous, right? Because the entire table is laid out and available and ready. And I feel like that with part of our heritage, the heritage that we haven't known as ours as Christians, the heritage of the faith system of Jesus, you could say our own personal inheritance. That's kind of what we've done. We've gotten a little bit of it. And I'm not saying we're missing things, because as Christians, if we have Jesus, we have the most important part. So don't misunderstand. When we have Jesus, we have everything. But there is more. And what the more does is it informs us more. And in that, as I mentioned before, we see more of the character of the Father, and we gain more of the understanding of who we are. So I think of the table a lot. Not only is it a really important and applicable description that relates to this faith that we got grafted into, but yeah, it's my illustration of the more that we have available to us.
Amen. To try to put this in a historical context, we think of Paul writing his letters to Rome and Philippi and Corinth, and he's writing to Christians who are already celebrating Christmas and worshiping on Sunday. But wait, seems to me these Greeks and Scythians and Romans and such who are receiving his letter, they're worshiping in the synagogue on Shabbat. They are celebrating Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot. And they're not looking at themselves as something separate from the Judaism of the day. In fact, I read in Acts 25, when I think that's it, when Paul is making his defense, I believe, before King Agrippa, or at least in Caesarea, he says, they call us a sect of Judaism, like the Essenes, like the Sadducees, like the Pharisees. Gee, I never learned that growing up in a Baptist church. So that means my spiritual ancestor in Rome, for example, is having table fellowship with a Jewish family who follows Yeshua. And that's groundbreaking on both sides. So this is, Gayle, this is where I want to ask about some of the bumps you have encountered along the way, because there's a continuity here. What we are experiencing today in the 21st century, believers, Jewish and non-Jewish, in the first century were also experiencing. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking to the rabbi there at the CJCC in Austin, what are some of the concerns he has about, here you come with your Jesus, and that has not been good for the Jewish people all this time, and are you appropriating what is ours? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've encountered that. How do you address such a question?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm going to tail back to one of the things that you just said. You know, it said that the early emperors could not tell the difference between the Jews and the Christians. And so Nero, for instance, and others persecuted both the Jews and the Christians, thinking that they were somewhat the same because they celebrate the same things. They're both doing Sabbath. They're both doing the biblical feasts. And there's really, the emperors can't tell. They're looking from the outside, looking in and saying, they all look alike to me. Let's just persecute them all, right? These monotheistic people who believe there's only one God are anathema to the emperors at the time, who say, nope, if they're any monotheistic, the one God believers, yeah, they're totally not, they're the ones that go, right? So what's happening in the Jewish world? So one of the things I want to answer two of the questions that you had. One of them is, within Judaism, we see anti-Semitism on the rise. Mm-hmm. I believe that the history of anti-Semitism from a Jewish standpoint is that it comes from Christians. There's really not much behind anti-Semitism in Jewish eyes coming from non-Christians. It's mostly the Christians that are the ones that are persecutors from Jewish eyes, and that's just the way it is. We would say different. We would say, well, Hitler wasn't really a Christian, but there's a lot to dispute that as well. So from Jewish eyes, it's mostly Christians. So if you think about it, one of our tasks is to call Jews to jealousy, right? These are our older brothers and sisters that get to look at us at some point and say, well, I don't know what it is that you have, but whatever it is, I want it. For right now, they're not even close to interested in us. There is nothing about Christians that make them say, wow, I'm really attracted to that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what would cause that? Well, one of the things is Christians, because we know very little about the main things that Jews are very interested in. One of the main things is things that happen on a calendar. We know nothing about that as Christians. good, bad, or in other, whatever you want to call that. We just don't know a lot about it. We don't really participate in it. And I believe that there's a sense in which there's a knowing that's missing within Christianity. When we know more about our brothers and sisters in the faith, we can have a better relationship with them. It's the same for any relationship. My best friend, for instance, or say I get a new best friend in the next week. If that's someone who I think is going to be a really good friend of mine, I'm going to want to find out, well, what's of interest to you? And they're going to find out, well, what's of interest to me? It's the same in any marriage, right? You pay attention to what is of interest of the other person, and they pay attention to what's of interest to you. This not only relates to our relationship with the Heavenly Father, for us to find out what's of interest to him, and for us to find out what's of interest to Jesus, we're going to find that the calendar and the scheduled events are right in there among things that are very top of mind, especially during those times of year. Mm-hmm. It's good for us to learn about those things, right? Because we're learning more about who God is when we learn those things. But I believe the same thing with the unity between Jews and non-Jews, and specifically Jews and Christians, for us to care enough to even know about the calendar that's so important to them. Mm-hmm. Is really important, I think. Now, can we be seen as those that are trying to steal it or usurp it? Perhaps, but you can tell pretty much what someone's intent is when you talk to them, can't you? Yes. You can tell if someone has ill intent toward you by talking to you. And I believe that Jews know that too. And I also believe that the understanding of the calendar of the first century among Christians will cause anti-Semitism to go down. Why? Because they're starting to learn more about this group of people that we have either not have an understanding about, or we have bits of anti-Semitism. It's amazing how anti-Semitism creeps through the church. Little comments here, little comments there. It's amazing. And my friends, we catch each other. Like there's even little things that have been said so frequently that I believe show things that we hadn't even known. And so I believe that an understanding by Christians of the feast seasons, the rest and joy of the Bible brings down anti-Semitism and brings an understanding on the side of Christians toward Jews, and perhaps a new view from Jews toward Christians. I believe it's a unity factor.
I would agree with you. And I also know that there are plenty of folks who are skeptical and don't agree with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I talk to them frequently.
Well, I'm sure. What kind of objections do you get from the church writ large?
Yeah. So I would say from the Jewish side, many Jews don't even consider us Christians except to say, they're going to convert us or kill us. That's kind of the side of the Jews, right? On the Christians, you have that's law and Judaizing, and don't bring that thing that is called law, in my understanding, back to mind, because that's not appropriate for us now. I think the easiest answer I have for that is I'll never teach that way. I will always teach, if you want to go up to the banquet table and get the caviar and all the goodies, then help yourself. It's there, it's available, and it's yours. Is it required and you have to? I don't think even theologically it is. I believe it's a gift. It's like a treasure chest that's been sitting over in the corner that has our name written on the top. We can walk back and forth past that all our lives and not open it up and gather up the riches inside and be fine. On the other hand, we can pass by it one time, see our name, open it up, and gather the riches that are intended for us. So is it obligatory among the church? I don't believe so. Is it a gift waiting to be unwrapped? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that is the thing, we do not have to argue about this. does the law apply to Gentile? We don't have to argue. I love the way you put that.
Mm.
Here is what God has laid out here. We are invited to partake,
Mm.
and let's do it humbly. From House of Aaron, Walk Beside Me, from their album of the same name, available at houseofaaron.com.
Drifting closer to thy glory from afar. Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the mid-rush portion of Reunion Roadmap. This is David Jones, and with me today is Barry Phillips. Shalom, brother.
Shalom, David.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you ever get used to something and then you take it for granted?
Yes.
I think if we're
I'll
honest,
have
we
to
can all
confess as
answer
much.
yes. Yeah, we all at some point in our lives just expect something to happen, and we just kind of take it for granted that it's normal. It's just the way it is, and cease to see maybe efforts that others have done for us or different things, and it becomes an expectation, and then we don't become thankful. We're not grateful. We're not, actually seeing this as something that someone is maybe doing out of the kindness of their hearts or whatever, or them just being, good towards us and showing us love, and it just becomes now it's just an expectation. And people can do this with God. I'm going to kind of set us up here a little bit. Back in Deuteronomy, Moses is talking to the second generation in the wilderness as they're getting ready to go into the land, and he's expounding the Torah that they've received, and he's telling them how life is going to be different when they go in the land, the things are to remember, the things are to not forget, the things they are to do, and all of this when they're going into the land. But yet, as he's rounding towards the end of the book, we find something pretty interesting in Deuteronomy 29, and I'm just going to hit the first 3 verses here. It says, Moses called all Israel and said to them, "You have seen all that Adonai did before your eyes in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh and all his servants and all his land. The great trials that your eyes saw, those great signs and wonders. But to this day, Adonai has not given you a heart to know, eyes to see, or ears to hear." So a couple interesting things that I want to bring out here in this. One is that there's nowhere else in the Torah that combines these three senses together. The that your eyes saw the great signs and wonders, right? But then he has in Deuteronomy 29:3, the heart to know, the eyes seeing, the ears to hear. So the heart and the mind go together, as it was the heart was considered, the seat of knowledge and everything, your thoughts, your intent, and everything was the heart. So the heart, the eyes, and the ears together. But yet, this is how we experience life. We experience life through our senses. We experience life through all of that. And so what happens here is, while we're going through something, we may see it, we may hear it, we may, see some things there, but we may not completely really understand some things that we're going through or some things that we're experiencing until later in life. It's kind of like hindsight's 20/20 kind of thought. We
just had the same thought. Yes.
So it's like, oh wow, I wish I would have known that then what was really happening. We're kind of like, we're witnessing history, boys. I mean, we don't really think about that. And even the first generation, when Yah brought them out of Mitzrayim, and there they are, they're at the sea, and they're on the other side. Yahweh performs miracles, and they break out in spontaneous song and praise and thanks, and this is awesome. But nowhere else do we see that in the Torah, where Israel is really expressing gratitude. They're being grateful for the things that Yahweh has done for them. In other words, they became accustomed to the miraculous. Even every day, Yahweh gave them manna, and they spoke bad about the manna. They became accustomed to the miraculous and ceased to have gratitude for the miracles that Yahweh did in their midst. And let me rephrase it and put it this way. They became entitled to the miracles.
Another word for entitled is spoiled.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
A child early in their development, very early in their development, they will subconsciously begin to look for, where are the boundaries? What is it that I can and cannot do? The first time you tell a child no, That's the first brick in the wall type thing. It's the establishing of a boundary, and whatever that no is, whatever it's about, they're going to immediately, typically so, they will immediately try again just to see if no means no. After a while, they'll understand, I don't do that. And then you start adding the other things that will build a boundary again around them. People oftentimes will quip that, what are you guys doing? You're going back under the law. You're going back into bondage. Why would you want to do that? The Torah is a very large, boundaried lifestyle. There is plenty of room within the boundaries of the Torah to live an enjoyable, joyful, thrilling, life-fulfilling existence. Everything that we would desire that is wholesome and righteous and good is found within the boundaries of the Torah. Yah is not withholding any good thing from us. But what do we want to do? We want to go over to where the boundary markers are and stick our little toe over it and see if anything happens.
Yeah.
We don't appreciate that which is within the boundaries of the Torah. We feel entitled to be able to expand it to our own desires and pleasures. Well, I know the Torah says that, but it doesn't apply to me because, I'm in exile, so, it doesn't apply to me. Well, I'm from the South, and that's just not the way that we do things around here. And we will make our cultural exceptions, and we'll fudge on things because we feel entitled to do so. It's not hard to see that America is turned into a very entitled culture. It's everywhere. We then want to apply that same mentality to the very thing that we're trying to use to shape our lives in a beneficial way. And after a while, it's like, okay, who's in charge here? Is it the one who gave the Torah, or is it ourselves? And we're going to grocery shop the Torah to our own pleasure. Just walk up and down the aisles of the Torah and say, I'll take this and leave that. I'm off my soapbox now. I'm sorry.
Well, it goes along with kind of what I'm thinking here. It's like when we're like, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm not that, and take that and that. It's not a matter of us receiving and taking an active involvement in something. We're approaching it with the idea of what can I get out of it. And the problem with that, along with the entitlement theme here, the problem with that is people don't appreciate what they haven't paid for. People don't appreciate.
Whoa. Say that again.
People do not appreciate what they have not paid for.
So if you give it to them, they don't appreciate it.
They don't see it as having value. See, and it's like, if I don't value something and you do, and you give it to me, I still don't value it. And so if I do not have an involvement in something, then I'm not going to appreciate what it takes for that involvement. I've heard it put this way too, that the people who contribute the least to a cause complain the most. And as well as the more that people are given, the more they will complain about what they've been given. That's kind of a tough thing there, isn't it?
Yeah, I was taught kind of early on that if you want something other, you got to work for it. You would like to buy that? Well, then you need to find a way to earn some money and buy it. Then we used to use the phrase "hard-earned money."
Mm-hmm.
If you're a kid and you're mowing yards to save up enough money for whatever your desire is, while that sweat's running down your face and it's hot and the bees get after you and all of those kind of things, you keep reminding yourself of the benefit of your labor. When you walk into wherever it is that you're going to make your purchase, sometimes you say, you know what? I don't know if I want that bad or not. I kind of like the idea that I've got this cash on hand, and maybe that thing is not as important to me as I thought. When we realize the price that was paid to bring Israel out of bondage, Yah kept reminding them, I am the Elohim who has brought you up out of the land of Mitzrayim. Don't forget that.
Mhm.
Of course, we often can quote the verse that says, we will no longer say Yahweh Elohim who brought Israel up out of the land of Mitzrayim, but Yahweh Elohim who has gathered us from the four corners or from the nations of the earth. There is an expenditure, there is a price being paid in the days ahead, and we're going to remember what he has done in our day. David, is it possible to make it into the kingdom and not appreciate it? Not appreciate the price that will be paid to get us there?
I'm thinking of Yeshua saying, he who has been forgiven much loves much. And if we have that heart of gratitude, then we can appreciate, although we may not fully understand the cost truly, but we can definitely appreciate the value that Yahweh himself became flesh, dwelt among us, laid his life down, resurrected, so that we could have a place of relationship with him in covenant.
Yes.
And even, Yeshua's disciples, he said, follow me. That cost them something. We say, well, salvation is free. It has been given to us free as a gift, but everything after that cost you something. To be justified is free. Sanctification, learning how to walk holy, that's daily, and that costs you. That's making the choices to walk with Yahweh. That's making the choice to follow Yeshua when the world dictates otherwise. And that, I believe, is learning to walk in covenant. And that is where we start to understand a little more of the value. And that's where the gratitude starts to come in. And if we just have a thankful heart for what Yahweh's done for us, if we realize the things that we've been forgiven, the things that we've been redeemed from, then I don't think we'll take him for granted.
Well, I would even argue that salvation is not free. Even on our side, Yeshua freely gave himself. It cost him his life. He willingly gave his life for us to have our redemption. But when we come to that place, it cost us our life. We have to be willing to say, my life is not mine anymore. I give it back to you. For us to be a recipient of Yeshua's offer of redemption and being born again, and then live our lives selfishly, we miss the whole point. Salvation is not a self-improvement technique. It is a life-changing, new identity, become a new person experience. And that means we die to ourselves in order to live, for him. So, there's...
Well, that's I must decrease so he must increase.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a surrendering of our heart, our lives, our soul, everything that we are. And doing that willingly is that heart of gratitude to where I still believe we would still take Yahweh for granted in so many things that we may not see or understand. Back to the main point that we started with in Deuteronomy 29:3. But this day, God has given you the heart to know, the eyes to see, and the ears to hear. This day. And in other places here we have in the Torah, this day you have declared that Yahweh is your Elohim. I submit to you, let every day be this day.
That's it. And this day has run out of time. We do appreciate your listening. We appreciate any comments and questions that you send, which you can do so at reunionroadmap at B'naiYosefNA.com. And David, we'll see you guys next week.
Hey, shalom, brother.
Here is the latest from Will Spires, The Garden. You can find this and more of Will's music on his YouTube channel.
From the grove, wicks from the garments, hold the flames in a row. Beaten and hammered, Shema showed the way, crushings for oil and threshings for grain. Fire, receiving your spirit, be prepared and sent out, scattered and sown to be grown and matured. The dresser is coming to gather in and restore. Beyond the veil, Shemayim sings, I'm revealing deeper things. I am calling a set apart people. So let the bride and spirit come. Let my will and you be done. We will walk into the garden, to the table. And I step down out of my place to meet you face to face. The breath that gives life to your weary soul, nourished to send out, restore where there's drought, to put the fire in your bones. Stirring within you, placed in your heart, the fragrance from incense, reminding of covenant, trailing through forest and cool of the day, walking back to the garden. Let my light lead your way. Beyond the veil, Shemayim sings, I'm revealing deeper things. I am calling a set apart people. So let the bride spirit come. Let my will and you be done. We will walk into the garden, to the table.
Hey, that was Will Spires, his latest song, The Garden. And our other musical guest this time is the House of Aaron, their song, Walk Beside Me. All of this has to do with being in a living relationship with our Creator. The garden that reminds me of two things, Stefania. One, the Garden of Eden, where the Creator walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day, or at least wanted to. And then the Garden of Gethsemane, where our Messiah agonized over the path in front of him to bring about the redemption of humanity and return us to that first garden. And then we have the Midrash by David and Barry, which they call entitled miracles. So I want to ask you about that, Stefania. What does it mean, and how does it connect with these two musical pieces, and perhaps with Gayle Timberlake's interview?
Well, other than miracles, I was thinking this whole idea of entitlement, where we can think that he's entitled to forgive us. But then we read in the Word, it says that if you don't forgive your brother his trespasses, neither will he forgive you. So this whole idea of entitlement, and I think even when we're talking about miracles, that can relate to that as well. And if we look at what Gayle is talking about, is participating in the blessings. The blessings don't come your way because you're entitled to those blessings. There is something that you need to do. You need to be a participator in those very things that bring about those blessings.
I remember the story of David when he purchased the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, the Temple Mount. And what did he say when Araunah was able to offer him the oxen and the implements for burnt offering and the field itself? And David says, I cannot give to God that which costs me nothing. That's the opposite of the entitled mentality. And I believe that's closer to what our God intends. He didn't create us just to become fat, dumb, and happy and float on a cloud through eternity. He created us to do work and to be his expression of himself into creation, which means, the blessings come, but he does expect us to do something for them. What's the point of blessing if that is just going to sit there and not be multiplied and carried forward to others? And that is at the heart of the Simcha Foundation, as Gayle is working real hard to help Christians understand the blessings available if we put forth the effort and learn God's calendar and what our Messiah did and who he is. Well, if you have enjoyed this episode of Reunion Roadmap, please visit our website at b'nai-yosef.na.com, b'nai-yosefna.com. And do check out the resources we have there. Also, if you have been blessed, then please consider our donate button. We would be honored if you would partner with us and help us continue the blessing. So on behalf of Stefania Pappas, Barry Phillips, and David Jones, this is Al McCarn. Shavua Tov.
Thank you for joining us on Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.